Okay, I have posted it everywhere, so it's ready. You you can hear me? Yeah, I don't believe there's any microphone, so I don't believe that you can hear me, but you can. Okay. All right. I think it's happening. Oh wait, no, I didn't hit the. Did I hit the go live button? Sorry, I have to check. Yes, I did. Okay, good. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the second installment of our teaching sessions from lockdown here. I'm in Vienna. Greetings to the morning for Los Angeles, the afternoon or evening, early evening for Europe, and for the home office, my hometown, Omaha, Nebraska, good afternoon. So today I wanted to start with this self-generating patch. This lesson is really designed for people who maybe aren't so familiar with Isadora. I mean, we're not going from the very beginning, but we're going to get into some things that is a big part of how you get better at Isadora, and especially if you start heading towards using sensors and any kind of interactive control. There'll be some stuff in here that's useful for you. So I hope that all of you will enjoy it. But the next session that we do, we're going to switch. We'll do something for more advanced users, and then we're going to kind of alternate like that as we go back and forth. Yeah? Okay. I'm just going to look at the chat now to see if anybody's saying anything about sound or anything else. Okay. No one's saying that they can't hear me, so I guess we're doing okay. All right. So let's take a look then at our starting point. So I have to switch here to this, and not quite yet that. We're going to look at that in a second. But let me go over here. So here's Isadora, and the first thing you want to do is get that URL. Or download that file. There's a couple files in there that will help us get started and that I'm going to go through, and one is kind of a nice example, especially if you happen to be here because you're a teacher, because one of the things we're going to get into today is value scaling, and this little file will maybe help that explain that. Yeah? So go ahead, I'll give you a moment just to grab that and unzip it, and in the meantime, just say that I hope that everybody out there is doing all right and that we're doing well here, and didn't get to leave the house today though. Hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. So it's https://troikatronix.com/guru2.zip. All right. So I'm going to assume that you grabbed that, and even if you're not watching this live, this will still be here, of course. Yeah. So let's go ahead and go to the first scene here, and I'll let you open it and catch up. We're going to actually look at the other file first, so don't worry. But let's just start here, and starting with this idea of the self-generating patch. Well, what is that? There's lots of people actually on our forum who do some amazing work with generative visuals. And in fact, one of our team, Ryan Weber, has taught the last couple of gatherings that we came together in Berlin, classes on that topic where they gets into rather advanced topics. We're going to do a very simple generative patch, something really, really simple, just to get started and to learn mostly about how you can use the wave generator and the envelope generator to sort of control things. I mean, everything we're learning is going to create imagery in a way, but the way in which you use the control, the wave generator and the envelope generator, that's useful across the program. So that's always something you can make use of. Yeah. And I want to start with a little bit of inspiration to give you an idea of what we're kind of going after here. And here's another URL. It's down in the corner. And but you don't have to go and look at it now. Hopefully you'll be able to hear the audio, but hopefully the main point is that you'll be able to hear the video. So let me get over here. See, oh, I've left that. Oh no, there it is. Yeah. And we just need to switch so you can see it. Yeah. Okay, yes, you can see it. So this is a piece from 1938, a film called An Optical Poem by Oscar Fissinger. He is perhaps the earliest experimental animator that was around, and this is one of the earliest experimental animation films. So let's just play a couple things. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to jump around to a couple sections. So here what you can see, the entire piece is created out of shapes. And there's a piece of music which I'm not hearing. Maybe you are, not really sure about that, but I'm just going to let that go for now because you'll hear the music when you watch this. But there's a piece of music, and actually what you're seeing is a precise visualization of that piece of music. But if you look here, I mean, essentially, wow, it's like a particle system. Of course, he animated all of that by hand, right? And one more little frame to look at here. So we have a really formal creation using pure geometric shapes and color, and he's creating a composition doing that. And that's kind of what I want to get to today, is that's the goal of the self-generating patch, is to make a little something like that, yeah? So go back when you have some more time, watch the whole thing and enjoy the music. It's really such an important film because it was one of the very earliest examples of this kind of animation, yeah? Okay, so thank you, Oscar, wherever you are. One more look. All right, that's just to give you some inspiration about what we might try to do today. And we will go back now to the main screen here in Isadora. So let's start. And if you open up the self-generating patch file I gave you, it should be in the scene called Simple Circle. And I forgot actually to click snapshot number 1 up here in the corner. So please do that, because when you do it, what you should see is just a square, and the square isn't doing anything. It's just sitting there, right? So each of these little snapshots lets us see how we might add a little something to this very simple patch. But let me go through it in the most basic way. There's a shapes actor, and that's making the white square that you see. Currently, its horizontal position is 0, its vertical position is 0, which places it right in the center of the screen. Now there's an effect here that we'll use a little bit later, but right now it's turned off, this motion blur, and that's going to the projector actor, which renders it to Isadora's stage. If you're new to Isadora and you don't know, just remember you want to go show stages to show your stage, as I have it here down in the right hand corner, so you'll get the preview window. If you happen to have an external monitor, then it should appear on the external monitor. So make sure to go. I'll just do it here myself. I'm going to say show stages, and there's our stage back, yeah? Okay. So we've got a square. Now I can move that manually if I click in the horizontal position or vertical position and drag the mouse up or down. Do that, and now undo that vertical position like so, right? But what we want to do today, we don't obviously want to do that with our fingers dragging the mouse. We want to automate it. We want to generate the imagery, right? So if you click now, I want to illustrate one other point. Click on snapshot number 2, and you'll see that a checkerboard just appeared on the edges. We're actually generating a square image, not an image that fills the whole stage, and I made this so that you can see it. I realized I probably didn't put the checkerboard file in there. You probably can't see that. Sorry about that. But suffice to say, you can see it here with me. You can see that there's this checkerboard on the edges because the actual image coming out of the shapes actor is square. Why is that? Well, look here in the horizontal size and the vertical size. When you put that into the patch normally from scratch, those are set to 0. And when they're set to 0, they're going to use the default resolution specified in the preferences of Isadora, which is, unless you change it, 640 by 360. But because we're dealing with stuff where we want to have these X's and Y's, we want the dimensions to be the same on both the horizontal and vertical, I manually set it to 1280 by 1280, so it's a square. Yeah, because if you make it a 16 by 9, you'll see it'll, instead of what we're about to do in a second, it won't make a circle, it'll end up making an oval because it's actually wider than it is tall. Yeah. All right, so that's what that checkerboard was for. Sorry for forgetting the file. Now you can click on snapshot number 3. And I guess let me just throw in there, in case you don't know what a snapshot is a way of taking a picture of all the numeric values inside of a scene. You can record a setting and store it up there and then instantly recall it. It doesn't remember the video or anything else like that, just the numbers that go, or the text that goes into each actor. So I've prepared this for you so that you can just step through it and see it. And in this first one here, I've got these selector actors, and the selector actors allow data either to flow through or to just have a fixed value. You can actually have many inputs, but look at the first selector. If it's set to 1, then it's sending 50% over here, which mysteriously gets converted to 0. We'll come to that in a second. But if I change it to 2, look at the little green part here. I change this. Now the value coming from the wave generator is going through the selector into the horizontal position. And what is a wave generator? Okay, again, if you don't know that. The wave generator is an actor that generates a continuous, smooth stream of numbers, and it's usually in some kind of a shape. Here you can see that we've got this wave generator set to sine. So it's a sine wave, so it's going like this, up and down. And the frequency is set to 0.2 hertz. That means that it takes, that it's running basically at 1/5 of a second. I mean, if we set it to 1, here, let's do that. That makes it a little bit easier. Now it takes 1 second to go from down to up to down, down to up to down. So I didn't want it moving so fast. I mean, I don't even know how good that looks on the live capture, but I'll set it back to 0.2. That's just slower. Let's just say it that way. But you can see the yellow line moving through the wave generator, so it's going up and going down and controlling the position horizontally of that little square. Yes, yes, Bone Map, I forgot to include the checkerboard image. Sorry, it's not important. It's only for showing that we were making a square image. Okay, anyway, and now if you click on snapshot number 2, this redoes the selector actor. This one's closed. It's going, or sending the 50%. And this one is sending the vertical value now. It's also going up and down. Yeah? So now instead of going across, we've only opened up this selector, and that wave generator is going through, and it's going into the vertical position, moving this up and down, right? But here's the kind of cool part about this and why I'm calling it a circle, because so far it hasn't looked like a circle. If you click on input number 5, and actually do that and then leave the scene briefly and come back. If you change that value, you'll have to do this. It's because I changed it to 1 hertz. You'll see that the shape is now making a perfect circle. It's going around in a circle. I'm not going to get into the mathematics of that, but basically what we have, when you have 2 sine waves and they're out of phase by 25%, which you'll notice the phase input of this wave generator is set to 25. If you combine those into a horizontal and a vertical input, you end up making a circle. Okay? We'll get back into that in a second. But so using those 2 wave generators and these selector actors, which are now passing the value both to the horizontal and vertical, we're making this thing go around in a circle. Okay? All right? And just a few more examples to let you see what they did. Let's add yet another control. If you click on number 6, now it's not only spinning it in a circle, this selector has opened up, and notice the wave shape on this wave generator is different. It's not a sine wave, it's a sawtooth wave named after the teeth on a saw that you do with wood. It goes up and it jumps down, and it goes up and it jumps down. Yeah? So that's going into the rotation. And here if you can watch those numbers, you may not be able to see them on the live feed so well, but this is counting up from 0 to 360. And again, how's that? This says 0 to 100 at this point, and over here, it's counting from 0 to 360. That's kind of confusing, right? This is the scaling I'm talking about. In just a minute, I'm going to explain that. But basically now, the thing's going in a circle, and the object itself is rotating because we're changing that rotation input. And just a couple more. If you click on snapshot number 7, it now has the bypass input of the motion blur was turned on before. That's now turned off. And so now the shape is persisting because the motion blur basically adds a persistence. It kind of lets the light fade away over time. And we've got quite a long, the decay amount is low here, which means that it lasts a long time. Here, if I set the decay amount briefly to 15, then you see that we only have the one thing. or that it's very short, I should say. But if I set it back to 1, now you really get these long trails as it spins around, right? And we go to number 8. I'm not sure what I changed there. But in number 9, something important changes. Notice that this wave generator is no longer set to 0.2, it's set to 0.4. And suddenly our circle has become a V, right? And if you want to look this up on the internet and know more about it, the technical name for this is a Lissajous figure. Yeah? Basically, by changing the relationship of the frequencies of these wave generators, you start generating different kinds of patterns. So, for instance, watch what happens if I change this wave generator to 0.6. If you're into old science fiction movies, you might have seen this on an oscilloscope. In some old science fiction movie, you see that this is a pattern you might have seen. It was a way that they made things look like they were technological back in the day, right? Seeing these shapes on an oscilloscope. And so, finally, in number 10, there's another one where I've got this top one set to 0.6 and this one set to 0.4, and a different figure emerges. What's the point of all this? Well, what we've got here is a system that generates imagery algorithmically, right? It's using kind of a program that we created by setting these wave generators, having them all work together, and control the patch. I realized in my snapshots I forgot to use the this one, but let's turn that on. So if everybody wants to, you can go to the third selector actor and type 2 and hit return, and now there's a wave generator making the shape bigger and smaller as it moves around, right? So this is a very simple self-generating patch, and I didn't build this. We didn't build this together. In a minute, we'll build something together so that you can try it. But I just wanted to give you something right off the bat that just worked, right? But the thing I want to get into is this issue of scaling, because it's something that comes up all the time, and it's really important. It's actually the way that you move from doing something very basic in Isadora to doing something with a really fine degree of control, where you can really get things to be just the way you want them, yeah? And understanding scaling, I mean, I'm pretty mathematical, but not everybody is. Sometimes it's kind of it seems confusing, yeah? So I'm gonna do you can leave your patch open if you want. You can look at the one I'm about to show later. It's included in the download I gave you. But I'm going to close this patch and open up this one, which is called the Scale Values Explainer. Yeah? Okay? So this is a patch I made to help explain how scaling works. Okay? And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the stage setup. I want this to be a bigger window, this preview. I'm going to set it to 33%. So I just set the default preview size here to 33%, and I'll close that so that you can see this a little bit better. So what this Scaling Explorer does, it allows you to see how something gets scaled in Isadora, right? So one of the examples we were looking at before, the output of the wave generator, I didn't point this out, but I'll look at it when we go back. The output of the wave generator is always 0 to 100, right? And that's the left side of the graph here in the sort of aqua color. So this is the input minimum and the input maximum, right? This is going into the sort of scaling process. So the lowest number and the highest number coming from that wave generator is 0 to 100. But what I didn't show either in the other patch that relates to this is that the horizontal position of that shapes actor had a limit of -40 to +40. So to simulate that, I'm going to go to output minimum and type -40 and hit return, and hit 40 for the maximum and hit return. Now you see the whole graph just changed, right? On the left we have 0 to 100, and on the right we have -40 to 40. And if you move your mouse up and down, you'll see how Isadora is doing a scaling operation to convert that range on the input to the range that is on the output. I mean, actually, if we think about it, what's on the left of the image is actually the output from the wave generator, and what's on the right is the input to the projector, the horizontal position input of the projector. To make this a little more noticeable, I'm going to set this to -10 and 10. So now you really see how that range, if it's 0 at the output from the wave generator, it's -10. And as I go up and I get about halfway through, you'll see that if I get it right on 50, if I can, no, not quite. Anyway, it's basically 0 over at the input to the horizontal input of the projector. And as I continue up, it's going to go to 10, right? So what you have when you use this scaling, you have a way of turning one range into another range. And it's that kind of control, getting things to move where you want, that when you're working with the wave generator or working with the envelope generator is super important, yeah? Because again, you'll see in a moment when we start building our patch, that's how we're going to program this to do exactly what we want it to do. Okay? Let's do another example though, because I want to point out what happens if I normally, of course, the minimum is less than the maximum. But in Isadora, it doesn't have to be that way. We can actually flip it so that I say 10 here and -10 here. So now the minimum is 10 and the maximum is -10. And you'll see now that the line gets inverted. And I'm going to make that even more clear by doing this. Here's 100 and 0. And you'll see what happens. By flipping those numbers on the input, that is the input to the actor, now we've inverted the value. When the mouse goes up, the value on the right goes down, right? So, and the other thing that comes up a lot of times when you're working with sensors, you've got a very tiny value. It's a very small value. For instance, the accelerometer on the iPad, when I use Touch OSC, goes from -1 to 1. But usually in Isadora, most things you want to have them go from 0 to 100. So if we set that minimum to -1 and the maximum to +1, that's what comes out of the accelerometer sensor on Touch OSC, and I set it to go from 0 to 100 at the input, now you see this, you can't even see it move really on the left side. But as I go from -1 to 1, that tiny range gets expanded into a number that we can really use inside of Isadora. That's a situation that comes up all the time. And the critical thing here is that you need to know what those numbers are. You need to know that output range, the thing that's coming from the output, like the wave generator or some other actor, a calculator even it could be. You need to know that range, and then you need to know the range on the input that you want it to have. So if you want to, later, after we're done, go play with this scale values explainer. But I hope that this visual tool gives you a little understanding of what's going on when you're scaling stuff inside of Isadora, because we're going to jump into that next, yeah? I'll look in just a moment, I'll look when the delay's over and see if anybody has any questions about that before I move on, or anything that you'd like me to explain. But yeah, and feel free, spread this patch around. If you need to use it in your teaching, absolutely do. I think I should relabel this though as output minimum and output maximum, and input, I think I did it backwards in terms of being clear in terms of Isadora. So maybe I should do that and I'll repost it later, yeah? Okay, let's see what anybody has to say. Thank you, and thanks for spelling Lissajou. Yes, it's le français. It's French. That was my terrible French accent. Okay, all right, I think you all get it then. Super. I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to go back to the self-generating patch. Okay. So there was our simple circle, and again, those snapshots. If you don't know about snapshots, by the way, let me just throw in here that for me is one of the most useful and most underused tools in Isadora. When I'm working on a show with performers, my general procedure is that I'll make a dozen and 2 dozen and 3 dozen snapshots for a scene of all kinds of different settings that I might want to try to see how it looks when those performers are working with the imagery that I'm working with, whatever. And I'll go into rehearsal and I can just click on those and I'll say, oh, that's really interesting, and I'll save that one. And another one I'm like, oh, that really doesn't look interesting at all. And you can, by the way, erase these by simply clicking on them and dragging them away. You see it turns into a trash can. I won't do that now. But you can drag those snapshots out of there to delete them. And so you end up with a list of stuff that was looking interesting that is what I would build on for the next rehearsal. So snapshots are a really fantastic note-taking tool, and that's how I've used them a lot in the past, yeah? All right, so again, you need to show your stage. If you didn't go, let me just do, I'm sorry, I did it with a shortcut. I know that's terrible when you're teaching. And I'm going to say show stages, and there's our stage, and there's the beautiful Lysigou figure. So I'm going to hit the space bar and go into this one called Screensaver. So this one harkens back to probably Windows 3.1 or someplace around there. This is like the super totally retro screensaver thing that if you ever put in a show, I will never forgive you. You have to do better than this. But for teaching, it's a good example. And here what I've got a wave generator. I'm going to set the phase back to 0. It doesn't really matter, but there's the phase set to 0. Going at 0.1 hertz, that means it takes 10 seconds actually to go all the way through. And how do we know how this scaling is happening? It's actually invisible. And I'll just say right now, this is something that's come up in discussions among the team. We're going to do something about this. We're going to add a visual interface to help people understand when scaling is happening, because if you look at this right now, if you don't know Isadora or you don't remember your patch, you might not actually remember. But to see what's happening, the first thing you should always do is just hover your mouse over the output, right? And if you do that, a tooltip will appear, and you'll see that it has the minimum and the maximum, and then another set of values, the scale min and the scale max, yeah? And I'm just going to, so it doesn't keep going away because those disappear after a couple of seconds, I'm going to click on the word value on the wave generator. So I click, and now you see up here in the top some information about this. The property is called value, the type is float, which means it's a number with a decimal point, and it goes as an absolute minimum 0 and an absolute maximum of 100. Yeah? And then down here though, very important, the limit min and limit max. You can change it. You can kind of chop this off, although in this case you do not want to do that. You just want to leave it set to 0 to 100. But the thing is, if you remember our patch we looked at just a moment ago, we wanted to go from 0 to 100. We needed to know the output range and the input range. So we've discovered the output range. It's 0 to 100. And now let's click on the rotation input, because the inputs also have that. Well, let's hover first. You see that minimum and maximum are the special values min and max, which means no limit. But the scale min and the scale max are minus 360 and plus 360. Again, if I click on it, you'll see here the property is called rotation. It's a floating point number. The minimum is min, means negative infinity if you want to think of it that way, and max, again, infinity, no limit in terms of the maximum. But the important numbers, the one that it's actually using to do the scaling, are the scale min or scale minimum and scale maximum. That's why they're called, they have the word scale in them, right? So if you remember our diagram, what we're doing is we're taking this range of 0 to 100, and it is automatically being scaled to a range of minus 360 to plus 360. And this rotation input, by the way, is in degrees, right? So if it's going from minus 360, it's down here, and then it goes one full rotation, that's 0, and then another full rotation, that's plus 360. So that range of minus 360 to plus 360 is actually 2 full rotations of the object, right? So that's working great, but let's look at what happens if I go in here and I click on the rotation. I'm going to set it now. I'm going to change the scale min and scale max. I'm going to change it to minus 30 to plus 30. Okay? And I hit return, and look what happens now. Now the range that it's going to move is much less, and you'll see it jump when you weren't seeing it jump before because plus 360 is the same as minus 360 when you're talking about degrees. But now, because remember, this is a sawtooth wave, right? So it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. It's going from minus 30 up, 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 up to 30, and it jumps down to minus 30, which gives you the result that you see on the screen. Yeah? And I can also, let's just speed that up a little bit. I'll set it to 0.5 frequency instead of 0.1. Okay? So we're getting that. And if the shape is very important too, look what happens if I change it to a sine wave. Now it doesn't jump back, it goes one way and then it goes back and then it goes back. You see what's happening, right? But the thing is, what I want to point out here, for a second, I'll just put myself back on if I can figure out how to do that. So the thing I want to point out here is that with just a few controls, we fundamentally change the way the whole thing looks, right? I mean, this is just one parameter, and already the actual visual result is completely different. So I really want you to keep that in mind as we move on here, because when you get up to 5 and 6 parameters, suddenly the complexity of what's going on starts to get much, much bigger, right? And we did that with just a few changes in the parameter, yeah? Okay, let's go back to here, I'll leave myself in the corner this time. I'm still learning how to be a video broadcaster on my own here. Okay, so, and we need to see the stage. So there's that, and that's maybe, hopefully, starting to give you a feel of how we might use the scaling relationship. Again, how do you know it's happening? Right now, you have to look. And you can do that by clicking on the value, or the output, whatever it is, seeing what that range of output is. You want to look at the limit min and limit max, and then scaling on clicking on the input and looking at that range, right? So that's where you can get that information. And like I said, by the time the next release of Isadora comes out, we're going to put something in there to make it super clear that scaling is going on. But the reason that it's in there is that it's critical. You always need to do this kind of scaling. And I also, when I first started writing the program and other people started to use it, I wanted to make it that the first thing that happens when you hook something up is that something big happens that you can really see. So always the values are quite extreme so that you really get a big visual result. That's to help people who are learning the software to see something happening so they understand that it's working. But that's not how you want to do this if you want to really make something really sophisticated. You want to be able to control those things in a fine way. All right, I'm going to hit the space bar now and go to part 2 of the screensaver. Now it really starts to look like Windows 3.1 or whenever that was that they had those screensavers like that. What have we done in this one? The rotation is just the same. Oh no, it's actually, I take that back. It is a sine wave in this one. It was a triangle in the other wave. But then I've got these 2 wave generators hooked up to the horizontal and vertical position. Let me turn the motion blur off for a second. So, and you'll notice it's not a square. I guess I didn't really say that before. I should have pointed that out. Notice that the width is set to 100. So that's, 100 of the entire width of the square that we're making. And the height is 2% of that, right? So it's a much thinner line. So that's why we're getting this line instead of a square, right? Because I set the height to 2. Of course, we're spinning it all the time. But not only are we spinning it, we're moving its center all over the place using these other 2 wave generators, right? So in doing that, we kind of get this pattern going on. And again, you wouldn't be able to track it probably with your eyes right now, but if you could trace the center of that object, it would be a Lissajous figure like we just saw before. So let's try going up to 0.4 for this one. And now that will speed up, and let's try 0.6 for this one. Let's make it move a little more rapidly. And it's going out of frame sometimes, which isn't so good maybe when it's by itself. But if I turn the motion blur back on, and we start seeing those trails, right, we start to see this visual result as it's moving around. So using, again, just those 2 or 3 parameters, we're generating this kind of image that I suppose in about 1995 that seemed super amazing, right? It's not super amazing anymore. Again, never use this in a show. But I hope that you're starting to get the idea. But let's look here at the horizontal position. It's exactly what I demonstrated in the previous scene that I was doing. I'm going to move me. Hold on, let's move me down here. Yeah, that's better. All right. It's doing what I said in the last example. The range of the output of the wave generator, we already know by now it's 0 to 100. But the horizontal position is minus 40 to 40. Yeah? And so is the vertical position. So that range of 0 to 100 is being scaled to minus 40 to plus 40. Well, why do we choose those numbers? Because the stage is always a unit of 100 wide and 100 tall. 0 is in the center. So minus 50 is to the left edge, plus 50 is to the right edge. But we wanted a little bit inside of that. In fact, I don't like the way that it's going outside of the screen too much. So what we want to do, let's collapse that range so that it doesn't leave the image so much. So if I click on horizontal position, you can do this too if you like in your copy of the patch. I'm going to do minus 20 and 20. So the scale min for this is minus 20 and the scale max is 20. And then I'll go over here to the vertical position and I'll do the same. I'll set that to minus 20 and 20. So now you can see already it's not leaving the center of the image nearly as much as it was because we've reduced the range that it can go by changing the scaling relationships. Now, again, if you're teaching or if you're a student, some teachers have talked to me recently, actually it came up about there's another actor you can use to do this scaling. I'll just bring it in here. It's called limit scale value. Okay. Now that does exactly the same thing that you're seeing right here. The function of this, knowing the range of the output, knowing the range of the input, and scaling the values, the limit scale value actor does that too. But what a lot of teachers like about that is that it does it in front of your face. You see it's right there. It's not hidden in the user interface. So that's a great way to work too, especially, again, if you're a more novice user and you want to be reminded of what's going on, use that. There's no penalty for doing that. It's not worse or better. It's just maybe helpful to see it. For me, I really like using it internally. That's the way I guess I like it because I created it. Of course I do. But, you know, it doesn't matter. You can choose to work in whatever way works for you, and that's totally fine. So if you prefer to use the limit scale value, the concepts are exactly the same. You see this limit min, limit max, out min, out max. The names are a little bit different, but this is the range of the input, this is the range of the output, and then you put the value in, and that value gets scaled and appears at the output. Yeah? All right, so there's our super cheesy screensaver thing. Let's take one more step and adjust one more parameter. So now what I've done is the same as it was before, except I have a fourth wave generator going into a color maker HSBA, and that stands for hue, saturation, brightness, and alpha. Those are the parameters that you can control. And what we're doing is we're modulating the hue, so it's just kind of going through the entire color spectrum. The saturation is always 100, the brightness is always 100, the alpha is always 100, and we're connected that to the fill color input here on the shapes actor. So as we're leaving those trails, and the trails, by the way, are a result of using the motion blur. Remember, if I turn the motion blurs bypass on, meaning it skips the actor, it's no longer in effect. Now you see the raw image before it has those trails on it. But if I turn the motion blur back on, now you get to see it with those trails. And I think we've gotten pretty close to replicating the absolutely cheese-tastic kind of screensaver image from the past. Again, I don't think that would be something you'd probably want to use in a show maybe, but the point here is that by just controlling a few parameters, you can start to generate imagery. And the other thing is to understand that scaling, because by changing these scaling things, all kinds of different things would happen with this actor. We'd produce an entirely different kind of imagery. Yeah? Okay. Let me just stop at this point and we'll take a breather while I look at some of the comments to see if anybody has anything they want to ask me. If I can figure out how to get there. Oh goodness. Sorry for my newbiness on this. Here we go. Okay. Um, um, yeah, the question you're asking, I see one question there from Bone Map that about scaling and having tips for animation speed, frame rate. That's a little complex for this lesson, but we can ask me on the forum. I can answer that, I think, actually pretty simply, but I'm not going to get into it right now. Let me just see what else. Okay. Looks like you're doing all right. Oh, a visualization and initialized. Yes, I will. That's a good question, Teddy. I will include something where something needs to be initialized. That's coming next. Okay. I'm glad you like the colors, Mara. Okay, cool. All right. So I think we're doing all right with this. And so, okay, now comes the fun part of this, or what I hope will be the fun part. Um, in the next scene called Composition 1, I've set up something much more, just a starting point. Again, it would be good if you did this from scratch, but I wanted to save a little time and provide you with a starting point. It actually would be better, much better, if you started from scratch, from the beginning, because part of this is figuring out what can you do. I think I always try to emphasize when I'm teaching Isadora that the thing to remember is that it's not going to explode if you hook the wrong thing to the wrong thing. You should always be hooking the wrong thing to the wrong thing. That is absolutely the best way to find something great, is to just try stuff, right? So we're kind of bypassing that trying stuff, but we're actually going to have a little assignment from this session that I hope people will partake in. And I really hope that you don't just go from what I gave you, but that you take these actors and really sit and see what you can do with them. Yeah? That said, here's our starting point, and I'll go through this with a little more care. We've got a keyboard watcher. The keyboard watcher looks for you to press keys on your keyboard if you don't know that actor, and it sends the key that you press to the output. And it already says letter A. It's looking for small letter A. And by the way, you can't have your caps lock on because capital letter A is not the same as small letter A. But we'll use that to trigger something, to make it go, right? So that's kind of our internal go button for this scene. And there's an actor that I don't know how many people use, but is super helpful for doing little animations. It's called ease in and ease out. Now, I actually learned this because all of my buddies when I went to art school were actually animators. In fact, my roommate was the guy who created the entire Madagascar series. And it just so happens my partner is also an animator. So somehow I've got animators all around me. But from those people, I learned what an ease in and an ease out is. And that's where you want to, when you accelerate something, if you do it like linearly, it looks weird. It looks like it doesn't look right. Because in nature, things gradually speed up, they get to their speed, and then they gradually slow down. The ease in and ease out actor does that process for you. And if you use it, you will get a more natural movement than you would get if you used, if you know it, an envelope generator, right? So, but we are going to use an envelope generator too. You're going to see both of them in action, but I want to start with the ease in and ease out. To be able to see this, and you should do this too if you're in this patch, in this scene, go to the width input of the shapes actor and type 50. Because right now it's set to 0, it's this tall, it's 0 tall, you can't see anything, right? So go to the width input of the shapes actor and type 50 into that input, and then you should see a line over there on the right, yeah? Okay. Now, I don't want you to press letter A yet because I just want you to see the one part of this. I want you to click here to the left of the word trig, or it should be trigger. If you do that, you'll see the line move across the screen and stop, right? Now, right now, the curvature, this is like the curve of the ease in and ease out, is set to 1, which means it's actually linear, which if I don't know if you can, it's it doesn't look quite the same. I want you to now change the curvature to 2. And I also need to explain what's happening. When you trigger this ease in, ease out, it starts at this value. Right now that's set to minus 40. That's what we were using before, the left edge of the image. The end value, where it's going, is plus 40 or 40. And it's supposed to take 5 seconds to do that. Now, click it again after you have changed the curvature input here to 2. And you see how there's this little speed up, this little acceleration at the beginning, and a little acceleration, a deceleration, that's actually technically not a word, but this negative acceleration at the end, yeah? And you can see this even more profoundly if you set the curvature to 3. So I went into curvature, I set it to 3, and now if you trigger it, it takes a long time to accelerate. And then the middle part is actually faster because it took so long to accelerate, it has to move more quickly in the middle so that it really takes 5 seconds, yeah? But I'd like you to leave that set to 2. So if you go back, click on this input next to curvature, type 2, and hit return, yeah? And trigger it one more time. So this little actor is different than the envelope generator. It kind of functions the same, but it has this acceleration and negative acceleration at the end that makes it look more natural. So it's a really good actor to use when you want to do a little animation, yeah? Now, just leaving it where it is, let's also trigger this envelope generator. The envelope generator is set to go from 0 to 100 over 4 seconds, and then to go from 100 to 0 over 1 second. Look at the image here. You'll see that it takes 4 seconds to go up and 1 second to go down. So this is kind of like a wave generator, right? Except that it's different. It's not always going. It only goes when you trigger it. And you can set how long it takes to go through each segment. Now right now there's only 2 segments. You don't do this in your patch, but I'm going to change this to 9 segments. And now you'll see that I can start making a really complex set of segments there that it's going to go through. You don't need to do that. Just leave it set to 2. But I wanted you to see that you can actually make many segments and make a rather complicated shape by entering all of those numbers in. But if you leave it set to 2, and again to say, when I trigger this, it's going to go from 0 to 100 over 4 seconds, and then from 100 to 0 over 1 second. So here we go. I'm going to hit the trigger input, and you'll see it gets bigger, 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 and then 1 second to go down to 0, right? So now this is the second part of this first beginning simple animation, is that if you trigger it again, it takes 4 seconds to go from 0 size to 100, and then 1 second to go back to 0, okay? So, I'm glad, Hugh, that you just learned that the ease in, ease out exists. You should also know, everybody, there is an ease in, ease out 2D. So if you're doing things in 2 dimensions, you can do this with X and Y as opposed to just horizontal, right? Okay, so just so you have all seen that, now everybody can finally hit letter A. And if you do that, both things are going to happen. You've got the ease in, ease out, moving it across, and at the very same time, the envelope generator is starting at 0, making it bigger, and collapsing it down to 0. Yeah? So we've made this really simple little animation of this line going across the screen and getting bigger and smaller, okay? All right, that's part 1. That's part 1 of our little scene, right? So go ahead and hit the space bar now, and you'll see that I've added a second element here. The first element is exactly what you just saw. You don't have to look at that again. But now we're going to look at this element, these actors down here. This is a different shapes actor, and in fact it's set in a totally different way than the first one. Yeah? And here we have a pair of ease in and ease out actors. Yeah? So let's look at those. The start value is 0, the duration is 2 seconds, and the end value is 40. So it starts at 0, goes up to 40. And that's the whole thing. That's what this ease in, ease out does. But then notice this complete output. Yeah? So that sends a trigger when it's finished, right? In this case, that would be after 2 seconds. So it takes 2 seconds to go from 0 to 40. And then it's going to go boom, and that complete trigger is going to fire, right? And we've taken that, whoops, didn't mean to disconnect it there. We've taken that and we've routed it into the trigger input of a second ease in, ease out that goes from 40 to 0 in 2 seconds. So we've chained them together, right? The first one goes from 0 to 40. It does the nice S-curve acceleration, and then it triggers the second one, which goes from 40 to 0. Yeah? So you can try just this second element by triggering this input here. So everyone down here on this ease in, ease out, down in this second part of the patch, click on the trigger input, and you'll see that there's a circle that starts at 0, and it gets bigger, and it gets smaller. Okay, why is it a circle? Let's look at the shapes actor for a second. The width and height are 25. That basically means it's a square, or it's going to be the horizontal and vertical sides are the same, right? But the number of facets, that's how many edges there are in the object, that's 32. So it's actually not a circle. If you could zoom way in, you might see the straight edges, but there's so many facets, it looks like a circle, right? And the thing that we're using to change the size is the scale input, yeah? And I'm just going to do that manually. You can see here that as I take that up, if I finally get it to 100, that's how big it is if you scale it to 100%. But I'm not scaling it that big, I'm making it smaller just because that's how I liked it when I was creating this, yeah? All right? So by setting this width and height, we say this is how big we want it to be, but the scaling modulates those height and width together to change an overall size of the object. If it's 0, obviously it's invisible because you scale it down to 0. If I scale it here to 10, it's quite a small one. 20 is bigger, etc. Right? But just so it's clear, this one up here, remember, the height, it's kind of weird because I rotated it 90 degrees, but the height is why it's a thin line. It's 0.5. And the width is what's making it go up and down. Probably shouldn't have done it that way. Not very good teaching, but regardless, that's how it's working. But over here, the width and height are the same. The number of facets are 32, so we see a circle. So this second section triggers that circle coming up and down, right? But importantly, the horizontal position, why did I choose 40? Because that's where this part, the part with the line going across, that's where it ends, is 40. Because when I made this, I just made it up. I didn't know what I was going to make, except I knew I was using the Oscar Fissinger. Thank you. I was using that as an inspiration for this whole class, right? And I knew I wanted to make something like that. So I thought, oh, it kind of stops here and gets to 0. Let's make a little like explosion, if you will, or some kind of mark. So since I knew this goes over to 40, then I thought, okay, well, I'll just put the circle at the point where it disappears, which is 40, and I get a circle there. So now I'm going to do the whole thing, and you can too. Hit letter A. There goes our line. And then there's the little circle as it comes to an end, right? So now, by connecting these two systems, we have the top part just does the line, but then it also has a link here. See, that's the important point, because the envelope generator has an end trigger. Just like the complete output of the ease in, ease out, when the envelope generator is done, it sends a trigger down through this wire into the trigger input, starting the little circle getting bigger and smaller. Let's do it one more time. So we go across, envelope generator is making it bigger, it's moving across the screen, it goes down, and boom, it fires the wire here, and you see the circle. One more time, just watch this wire. Just watch this one wire that I've got highlighted. Up it goes, and here comes the end trigger right about now, and you saw it turn green briefly, and that's what fired the ease in, ease out, which triggered the other ease in, ease out, and we have this little circle. Okay? All right, one more little addition. I wanted a dramatic ending. I thought it was kind of nice what I made. I had this kind of mark at the end where the circle stopped, and I wanted something kind of grand to end this little mini composition, yeah? So hit the space bar one more time. Everything in the two beginning part is the same, and you'll need to scroll down now because I have one more system at the bottom, and you'll see here if you look at the shapes actor, this has 4 facets. That means it has 4 sides. It's a square. The scale is 100. The width and height are 100, meaning it's as big as you can possibly make it. You're filling the frame. And then, but the vertical position starts at minus 100, right? So I'm going to move this manually. I'm clicking in the vertical position, and you'll see this massive white square that I'm bringing into the frame. Okay? So it's important here to say that I set the vertical position, the scale min and scale max, to minus 100 to plus 100. Again, why would I do those particular numbers? And I want to make sure my face isn't on top of it. You can still see the thing. Okay, good. Because remember, the stage in each dimension is 100%. The center is 0. So the top of the stage is minus 50. But if you go all the way to minus 100, you can be 100% sure, so to speak, that the white square cannot be seen. We want to get it all the way off the edge of the screen, right? So again, if I type in minus 100 for the vertical position, you don't see it. But as soon as I start scrolling, you see it, right? Okay? So here is my finished little small, very modest homage to Mr. Oscar Fischinger. I'll never say it. Oh, what happened? The white square is there, but it's not supposed to be. Why? Because I was in the middle of editing, I was talking to you, I was not forgetting where I was, and I forgot that the white square was there. That is bad. That's what happens when you're in a rehearsal and you're working and you're tweaking something and you get interrupted and you've got to jump to another scene because they're ready for you, and then you run the show and that thing is there and you don't want it to be there. I can tell you that has happened to me more than once. So how do we avoid that? First, you've got to make the mistake to realize that there could be a potential problem, but this is the question that was being asked earlier. Sometimes you want to be 100% sure that something is starting in a particular place or it has a particular value. In this case, I can tell you that the place I want it to start is off the screen, and we know that minus 100 is off the screen. How can we ensure that happens? Well, if I click on this vertical position, we already saw the scale min and the scale max. But here is another input called initialize. And what that does is, it's not checked right now. Right now it doesn't do anything. But if I check this box and I set it to minus 100, what it means is when you enter this scene, any input that has this initialize checked, the value is automatically set to whatever you say in the box next to the initialize checkbox. Yeah? So let's mess it up again. I'm in rehearsal, I make a mistake, I forgot that I left the white square there, and now well, first of all, let me stand by. I'm going to uncheck the initialize first, right? Okay? And if I leave the scene and I come back, oh man, the white square is there, and all the dancers are lit up and they shouldn't be, and whatever, right? Okay? That's what you don't want to have happen. But if I click on this vertical position and check this box, now when I leave the scene and come back, it is going to force this number, this minus 51, to minus 100. So let's try it. Come back. Ah, that's better. So now it's off the screen. It's where we need it to be so that I can hit letter A. Let's follow it across here. Letter A. Here goes the line. And then here comes the end trigger. Boom. Now there goes the circle. And as soon as the circle's done, boom, the white square flies by. Okay? So, all right, it's not a masterpiece, but I think it starts to illustrate what I wanted to kind of go for in this lesson. I wanted to show you how you could use these systems to be able to start generating these very simple animations because, and now I'm gonna do this really fast. You should use this as inspiration. I'm not gonna go slow enough that you can follow me, okay? I'm just gonna do this really quick. I'm gonna get this shapes actor. So here's the shapes actor. And here's a projector actor. And I bump those together so I can see it. I add a wave generator and another wave generator. And I put those, I'm just going to start by putting them in here so it's flying around somehow. Okay, that's too big, I don't like that. And it's going off the screen too much. So let's make the scaling 25. You can play this in slow motion later if you want to try and do what I'm doing. I'm going to set it to minus 20 to 20, but the vertical I'm going to leave doing 100. So it's kind of in the middle, but it's going way off the edge. Let's actually just use minus 50 to plus 50. Okay, that's one element. Love it. So now I get another shapes actor, and I connect this. Okay, I want this one to be a triangle, so I'm going to set the facets to 3, and I want it to spin around. So I'm going to get a wave generator, put that into the rotation. Oh yeah, that's really fast. Okay, let's slow that down. I'm going to say 0.2 there, and I'm going to change it to a sawtooth. Very often with rotations, you want to use a sawtooth so you get this seamless kind of rotation. Okay, that's pretty okay. I think it's too big. I'm going to set the width and height to 10, even less, 5. So I have a nice little, okay, that's fine. I love that too. Let's add another element. Okay. Just one more, just for purposes of illustration. Here's a projector, like this. And this one is going to be a tall line. So I'm going to set the width to 2, the height to 100. There's a nice line. Oh, I forgot. I wanted my triangle to be a color. I'm going to click on fill color, and I'm just going to, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pick something. Oh, that's kind of a nice blue. All right, good. All right. And then I have this line. And all I want that to do is fly back and forth all the time across the image. So we hook up a wave generator. I'm going to slow it down a lot though, 0.1, so that it's going back and forth. The horizontal position is minus 50. I don't actually want it to go. I only want it on the left side of the screen, I just decided. So minus 40 to minus 20. So it's just kind of lingering over there. Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. And but I don't want it to be there all the time. I want it to kind of fade in and fade out, so it's sometimes there and sometimes not. Let's use a wave generator in another way. Let's go and hook, I just duplicated that. I'm going to make this go a little bit faster than that one up there. I'll make it 0.21. And I'm going to hook that up to the intensity input of the projector that is projecting that line. So now you can see as it's going back and forth, it fades in and it fades out, right? So by adding that control, it's not there all the time. You could do the same thing with an envelope generator. You could trigger the envelope generator with an, let's do that actually, I want to add that too. Here's a keyboard watcher, okay? And here's an envelope generator. So this envelope generator is going to go from 0 to 100 in 1 second. And I'm going to connect that to the scale input of the triangle. This is the shapes actor that's making the triangle. Okay, let's see what happens if I hit letter A. Nice. So I can sit here with my fingers and make that kind of zoom up anytime. I like it better if it's zoomed down so that more it's small most of the time. How do we do that? I'm going to go and set the value 0 of the envelope generator to 100 and value 1 to 0. So now if I hit letter A, it gets too small. Let's set it to 10 as the minimum. Cool. So every time I hit letter A, I get a little accent. right? Where this zooms down, yeah? So, excuse me, that's not coronavirus, I'm fine. Anyway, um, so uh, that that was fast and furious. I really didn't mean for you to follow that. What I meant for you to see was the way in which I just kind of like went with it and hooked some things up to get something that I thought was kind of interesting. Of course, I know how to use this relatively well, so I was pretty fast. You may not be as fast. But the real point is there's all kinds of things you can hook up to. You could hook up to the line size, the height, the width, the scale, the rotation. There's this odd inset thing I didn't even show, but you know, there's just lots of things in the shapes actor. So simply by using a shapes actor, a projector, and a combination of wave generators at different speeds and envelope generators that you can trigger, you can actually make a small composition that is just going on its own. Of course, if it requires the envelope generator, then you would have to trigger it. Remember, and I'm just throwing this in at the last minute because I didn't think about it until just now. If you would like to have a trigger like that that goes at a certain rate, you can always use the pulse generator actor. That also generates a trigger at a certain rate of speed. Right now it's set to go at 1 cycle per second. So if I connect this pulse generator to my envelope generator's trigger input, that means every second the triangle gets triggered to get bigger. But let's make it small, let's make it slower, let's make it 0.33. So every 3 seconds, the triangle gets bigger, right? So if you could also use the pulse generator to periodically trigger an envelope generator and get it to do something like this, yeah? Okay, sorry if it's going a little bit too fast. Remember, this is all recorded. It's going to be available the instant I say stop on the end stream. You can go back to YouTube and you can go through it. I just want to point out too that again, specifically this last scene, I went super fast. That was not for you to really follow what I was doing. It was more to be inspired about a way of working. And of course, if you're at the beginning of the program, you won't go that fast. But the whole thing is that I'm trying to encourage here, there is so much to be found out. It seems like not much. The shapes actor and the projector, it doesn't seem like it's very complicated. But in fact, I really believe you could make something perhaps almost as beautiful as what you saw in that animation that I showed at the beginning by working with these actors, you know? And so that's what I was sort of hoping to show, is that we're thinking about composition. This is a kind of visual music, if you want to think about it that way. As a composer, that's kind of how I think about it. And to think about, what's the rhythm of this? How can I make an accent? That's what I was trying to do with that square that went by before. So think about that, because this is my proposal, because that's basically what I wanted to cover. I'm going to take whatever questions you have in a moment. But this is what I thought would be fun. I mean, so many of us are stuck in our homes, right? And we've got some time, maybe, you know, perhaps we have some time on our hands. And I thought it would be an interesting project. I am inviting everyone who watched this to contribute. I have to go make this thread on the forum, or maybe actually, Lucas, you could do this for me as we're speaking. If you could go into the forum and create a new thread that is the self-generating patch contributions, let's call it that, the self-generating patch contributions, because what I'd like you all to do is I'd like to give you an assignment to work on, and I would like you to make a very simple visual composition in the style or similar, somehow in the spirit, let's say, of what I've shown you. It cannot last more than 15 seconds. It has to be an absolute, have a feeling of a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it cannot last for more than 15 seconds. And you are not allowed to use anything except the actors that I've shown you in this lesson. The envelope generator, the wave generator, the shapes actor, and the projector, as well as the keyboard watcher and the pulse generator. I think that's everything that the ease in, ease out, right? Those are your limitations. And I would love you all to fool around with this and experiment and play and see if you can make something that feels like it really has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and is excuse me, no longer than 15 seconds. When you finish that patch, please upload it to that thread so that all of us, because then maybe what I'll do with your permission, if some people do this and it's a success and we've got 5 or 10 or 15 of these, we will actually put them, compile them into a clip that you can just watch. I mean, for now, you can all just download the patches and see what each other did, which is also incredibly useful because another person is going to operate a totally different way than you, and they're going to do something, and you can learn from that experience. But I think that's your assignment, and I would love by next week, because next Friday we'll do a more novice lesson again, that we have those, and maybe we'll take a look at them together, or by then you'll have a clip that we can look at. Yeah. So now is a chance to ask some questions. I want to say that I did see the one comment about it's a little too fast, and I'm sort of learning how to do this. This is only the second time I've done this, and I'm debating on how slow do I go because there's just a variety of users out there. If you haven't watched them, it's very important to go watch the introductory, the 4 online, like formal tutorials that go through this that we have for Isadora 3. There's also an even more complete set of Isadora tutorials for Isadora 2. Yes, it's old, and yes, there's some references in those older tutorials to resolution limits that you absolutely do not need to follow. However, the knowledge contained in those tutorials is actually totally valid still, even if you're using Isadora 3. So if you are at the very beginning of using Isadora, go watch those tutorials because they're pretty well done, and I think they'll take you through the stuff that you need to go through. So now I'm looking at the questions to see what anybody has to say over here. I have to move my mouse where I can scroll. Oh, that was one question. There's a question about when would the enter scene trigger. There's an actor I didn't mention here, but it's useful to talk about. Enter scene value, right? Someone asked, why would you use the initialize versus the enter scene value? They both have reasons to use them, but the thing I want to warn you about is when not to use them. And the place you don't want to use them is like this. So here's a movie player, and the idea of this would be, let's say you've got something where you've got interactive control. Let me just put a counter actor. I don't have a movie to play right this second, but I'm just going to illustrate this briefly because this came up on the forum just the other day. Here's a counter actor, and I'm changing the movie input of a movie player. Just imagine, it's changing movies, right? But you always want to be sure it starts with movie number 2, so you add an enter scene value. That is the wrong way to do that in this particular case. You never want to use the enter scene value for the number of a media, that is a sound file, a movie file, a 3D model, whatever. Instead, you want to use initialize. Why? Because that field is special. When Isadora starts up a scene, you know, when you hit the space bar, it may seem instantaneous, but actually it has to go out and find all the media you're asking for, load it in, and get ready to play it. Yeah? And if that initialize is checked, that is the media number it will use. If you use the enter scene trigger, in this case, if I left the scene and came back, it would load movie 19, and then it would send the 2, and then load movie 2. So actually it would preload 2 movies, and you might even see a glitch. You might see 1 frame of movie 19, and then you'd see movie 2. So that's an important tip for the enter scene value. For just your normal numeric inputs, it probably doesn't matter that much. But for this particular case, it's important. So that's kind of a pro tip, a little more advanced, but since you asked the question, I just wanted to answer it. All right, let's see what else we have here in the questions. Yeah, that's a nice idea about doing a live patching thing together. I was seeing Peter Kern from CDN was posting about some musicians that are doing live coding and doing live music together, even though they're all stuck in their homes like we are. Okay. All right. Oh, there's one question there from, I don't know even how to say that, but Pigalia. How do you split one wire into the other? Well, basically, you don't really split it. You just make another one. So let's say that's a totally valid thing. I wanted to control this horizontal and vertical position with the same wave generator. In that case, you just click on the output, you add another wire. Well, let me just do it the simple way. Click here and click on the input. So there's no actual split function. You can't click in the middle and split it. You just have to add another wire. Yeah? Okay. So anything else out there? All right. Well, I think that will be our second guru session. I hope that that was interesting and useful for you all. I'm really looking forward that you might all make something and contribute it to the thread that I hope Lucas has started, but if he hasn't, I'll do it in a moment. So please do that, because I think, the reason I'm doing this, the reason I started doing this was because I wanted to find a way to help in this situation that's so difficult for all of us. And I just thought, let's bring the community together, let's be together, and let's make some stuff. And the idea that you would all contribute and we would see what you're doing with it, that for me feels really good. And one last suggestion, I'm just gonna throw these out as part of this. I know it's not part of Isadora. What I'm doing right after I finish this is I'm having a virtual dinner with friends from Berlin. Obviously we can't be together, we can't come to the same place, but we're using Google Hangouts. We're having dinner at the same time, and we're going to have dinner. That's the second time I've done that. Don't forget, a lot of people are stuck alone in their homes. You know what I mean? I'm lucky. I have someone that I'm with. But not everybody has that, and we've been reaching out and arranging these virtual dinners with people that are on their own. That's a great way to find each other and be together and talk about your Isadora patches, for instance. But let me encourage you, we did it once, and it was super nice, and we laughed a lot. So keep that in mind, and because I want to make sure that everybody out there is taking care of themselves, because yeah, we've got a lot more patching to do in the future, so I want everyone to stay well and stay healthy. All right, thanks for coming by for the broadcast. I'm going to sign off from Vienna, and I'll be back next Wednesday when I will get into some advanced topic. I don't know what yet, but I will announce it as soon as I know. And that one's going to be definitely for advanced users, so if you're a beginner, you're welcome to watch, but you might find it a little overwhelming, all right? So everybody have a nice weekend, stay safe, see you soon on the next broadcast. Bye-bye. End stream!